resolved, but 5 minutes after the hour is a poor time to resolve them. So I appreciate your patience in following the redirect. All right, so we are talking about getting started with marketing automation today. A couple of housekeeping items. One, please post questions into the chat. That way we can aggregate them, make sure to squash duplicates and get as many addressed at the end of the webinar as possible. And any resources I mentioned, we're going to get out to you in the next day or two. It is a holiday weekend, so that probably means no later than Tuesday. A little bit about me. I've got about 20 years of experience. I started out in software development and then pivoted into marketing about 10 years ago, and since launched Brilliant Metrics. I teach a variety of courses at UWM School of Continuing Ed. Love educating folks. And I have 3 young children. I'm a devoted father, and hopefully they don't interrupt this webinar. But let's move on here a bit. Brilliant Metrics, we are a B2B marketing agency. What makes us different from a lot of the other B2B agencies out there is that instead of breeding a form of dependence on the agency with our clients, we enable our clients. We actively take them along for the ride. We make them better marketers every chance we get through education, tools, etc., and a gentle push, to move on to that next level and continue growing. Now, on to the meat of the conversation here. So today, we're going to dive through briefly some definitions in history, make sure we're all clear on what we're talking about when we're talking about marketing automation, as well as what the capabilities are. We'll talk about why marketing automation is a must-have in today's day and age. Give you some tools to make a business case for marketing automation at your organization. Briefly touch on vendor selection, and then finally go through a couple of keys to successful implementation. So it's a lot to cover. I'm going to move a little bit fast, but don't be afraid to pop some questions into chat. So you talk about marketing automation. Marketing automation isn't just software. It's really the tools and the practices to achieve one-to-one communications and targeted outreach. If you just have the software, and you can use marketing automation software to just send email, you have to also implement the practices to be able to do that one-to-one. And we'll talk about what we mean by one-to-one in a moment. The key is that one-to-one communication and targeted outreach is based on intelligence and behaviors of your targeted audience. It's not based on what you as a marketer are choosing to do at this moment. A little bit of history. Email marketing's been around for a long time, and marketing automation, while it does a lot more than email marketing, really came out of those early email marketing systems. Constant Contact was founded in 1995, and the marketing automation came on the scene around 2006, and that's when you see, amazingly, HubSpot, Marketo, and Pardot all launched in the same year with very similar product sets. It was pretty impressive. So we've had marketing automation for about 15 years now, and a lot has remained unchanged. I do want to make sure that I call attention to the fact that we're actually entering into a new era. And in 2018, we started to see a couple of changes. One, a new breed of technology called customer data platforms, or CDPs, came onto the scene. And those are working slowly to actually eclipse marketing automation. Now, most organizations are nowhere near ready to implement a CDP. So I think you're in a good place if you're looking at marketing automation, but I want to make sure you're aware of it. The other thing that's changing is we're entering an era of privacy, where consumers are now really concerned about whose databases they're in, how they're being marketed to, etc. This means two things for us as marketers. One, we need to make sure when we're implementing systems like marketing automation that we're taking into consideration the privacy needs of our audience. But two, it means that a lot of the data that's floating around right now that allows us to do complex advertising targeting, allows publications to expand their reach beyond the platform that they're selling to you, that allows us to do retargeting and all kinds of other technology. A lot of that's going to shrink a little bit over the course of the next couple of years. And having a solid foundation with your own data in a platform like this will be imperative in order to be successful. I like to frame marketing automation in the context of a maturity model, meaning, we all start out as novices. Our marketing departments start out with the tools that we have and we're able to use at the beginning of when we start our journey down digital. And over time, we all progress. We get more mature in our implementations. And so I'd imagine most of you right now are sending batch email campaigns, right? Newsletters, some sort of batch and blast is the other term for it, but emails where you have a list of people and you're shooting that out. The next level is drip campaigns. This is where you set up a series of emails to go out to a list. The third level is where we start getting into triggered or auto response campaigns. This is when we start to move into the marketing automation territory, because at this point, everybody isn't getting the same email at the same time. Now we're responding to somebody taking an action on a website with a form by clicking on something, visiting something, and we're giving them a unique experience to them. And then the next level from that is complex automations. At this point, you're making just-in-time decisions on who's getting what message when via what channel, and you can do some really powerful things. I want to come back to that concept of one-to-one communications, because that's really what we're talking about when we're talking about auto response and complex automations. There's a lot you can do with just a basic email marketing platform. You can do audience personalization, where you start to segment your audience into different lists, and different people get different emails at different times, but they're still based on segments of your audience. You can do content personalization, either as simple things like addressing somebody by name, or more complex things like swapping out the body or the image of an email based on intelligence on that list. What you can't do is timing personalization. And this is where the power really is. There was a study released a couple of years ago that found that if you dictate the timing of an email based on the user's actions, it's a triggered email based on their actions, the efficacy of that email triples. And this is where you can only do things with marketing automation. These two graphics are backwards. So that's the core capability, but let's talk about everything that marketing automation can do. When we talk about these marketing automation systems, they are drop-in replacement for whatever you're running for email marketing today. They can do your batch and blast and your drip, but they also can do that triggered email for that one-to-one communications just in time. You can do your content personalization. Pretty much all of them also have A/B testing, so you can test a version A and a version B of email. That's also available in a lot of email marketing platforms as well. One thing that you can do in marketing automation that you can't do in an email platform is send from sales, at least not if you have more than one salesperson. Marketing automation platforms almost universally integrate with your CRM, and your CRM knows who owns which contacts. And based on that, you can have the marketing automation platform send an email from the sales owner instead of from the marketing department. This can be hugely powerful because, well, people like to hear from people more than they like to hear from brands. And so as long as you're careful about not stepping on the toes of what the sales team is doing, you can really, really drive some high engagement on your emails that way. Marketing automation isn't limited to email, though. These platforms also allow you to rapidly stand up landing pages. So if you're running an event, a webinar, you have a specific offer or call to action, you can stand up a landing page quickly. One of the benefits of doing this inside of a marketing automation platform instead of on your website is they're generally squeeze style landing pages, meaning that there's no additional navigation on that page to distract the prospect from following the path of the funnel, right? So they're going to convert at a much higher rate if they don't start bouncing around, look at your about page and this other page and this other page. The other benefit of building landing pages inside of a system like a marketing automation system is that you can easily embed forms because the forms are also part of the platform. Most marketing automation platforms have lead scoring. So here, in addition to being able to automate and orchestrate emails and activities, you can score the actions of your audience. This lets you identify those within your audience that are demonstrating intent to buy. When they accrue enough of a score, then you can alert sales, and sales can embark on some outbound outreach in order to try and convert that opportunity. Most, but not all, marketing automation platforms have a component for website personalization. So again, we have this database. We're scoring the prospects, your audience inside that database. We're tracking their activities so that we can respond accordingly. But we can also change their experience when they're visiting either landing pages or your website, and change that content so that it's catered exactly to either who they are, the type of company they work for, or what they just did somewhere else inside of your digital footprint, right? So this can be really powerful in creating that ideal environment for that prospect to nurture them along their path. I mentioned forms. Marketing automation gives you a great opportunity to centralize those forms and make them smart forms, right? Because now your contact information is automatically synced into the database. It's automatically synced over to CRM. You can automate not only just a response, but also follow-up and other treatment that needs to happen to that contact. And you can set up complicated logic where, well, if they fill out this on the form, then it goes to customer service. But if they fill out this on the form, then it goes to sales. Oh, and by the way, if they're in this region, it goes to this sales rep. And if they're in this region, it goes to this sales rep. All of that can be automated and managed within the marketing automation system. So that can sometimes save considerable time on the person that's responsible for fielding and routing all of these leads as they come in. And finally, a lot of people think that marketing automation is limited to email, but in reality, almost all these systems aren't. We've worked with clients to send postcards or 3D mail tchotchkes and stuff in boxes, right? Based on the actions of the audience. We've worked on web and mobile notifications so we can bring people back to the website, text messaging, sales outreach, triggering other people within the organization in sales or customer service to pick up the phone at certain points because that's the appropriate thing for the customer or prospect. And then finally, display advertising. There are ways to integrate or sync data over to Facebook or banner display ad platforms and actually change the advertising that a person's getting based on what we know about them in the database. So that covers a lot of what marketing automation can do. But let's talk about why this matters to you, right? It's not necessarily an easy or cheap thing to implement. So what's the value? The first value is increased efficiency. You either have things that people are doing manually, like routing leads, or standing up certain emails, etc., because they have to be done on certain times or cadences. A lot of that can be automated now. And on top of that, if you get a good structure behind webinars or events or contests or quizzes or whatever it might be that you want to replicate with through future iterations of that, it's really easy in most of these systems to simply clone all those assets and then go and change what they're about. Marketing automation produces much more effective nurturing. Because everything is personalized, it does a much better job of keeping those people that are the right people, the right companies and the right people, the right roles, but it's the wrong time for them to buy, keeping them engaged and keeping the brand in front of them. It also allows you to educate them and prime them with exactly the information they need based on who they are and what they've expressed interest in. Because of the lead scoring capabilities, or even we've even set up very simple triggers. Somebody visits a given particular page on the website, great, go ahead and notify sales, because if they're even visiting that page, there's some intent there that we need to follow up on immediately. or you do the slower scoring method. Both of those let you identify more leads. Those people aren't ready to fill out a form, but they're ready enough to buy that they're looking at enough content that it sends a clear intent signal. So these proactive lead opportunities are things that you can't do without a marketing automation platform. Otherwise, you're waiting for that person to come to you. And then finally, I mentioned this earlier, we're in this era of privacy. It's cutting back on what some of the external pubs are able to do, what some of the programmatic media is able to do. Facebook is screaming about the iOS 14 updates and their limits to track people. So doubling down on what's called first-party data, the data in your database, can only stand to benefit you. It also makes you less reliant on trade publications if you're in a position where you're investing significantly with those trade pubs. And then sales and marketing alignment. One of the things that a lot of marketing teams struggle with is how can they be more tightly integrated with sales? And normally, when you've got a people problem, technology is not the answer. But what's neat about marketing automation is it actually ends up triggering a lot more conversation between sales and marketing, because now you're pushing intelligence into the CRM, so people interacting with the CRM can see what their prospects are doing, where they're what content they're engaging with, what they're downloading, what they're clicking on, what forms they submitted. All that information can get pushed over to the CRM where people can go and sales can go and look at it. So now they're more aware of the activities that marketing are engaging in to help drive greater awareness and educating their leads that they're working with. In addition, sales can trigger some marketing cadences right from within their CRM if you have it set up to do so. So now the sales team can trigger those emails to come either from sales or from marketing, or maybe even text messages or other things, 3D mailers, etc., all from the comfort of their CRM. And it's all automated. And then finally, when you kind of get to the next level, if you have a scoring model and you're developing these leads, you can actually build in a workflow into the marketing automation platform to get feedback from sales on the quality of these leads. And that can be hugely powerful for helping marketing do a better job of delivering, quality leads and prospects to the sales team. At the end of the day, when you climb that maturity mountain all the way to the top, what you end up with is essentially a brain, right? So you think about it, we humans, we have a brain. Our brain receives input from our senses, sight, hearing, taste, smell, etc., and then sends output through, well, our hands and our mouths and whatever else. Your marketing automation platform, when you reach the apex of your maturity and your implementation, serves in the same way. You have a series of inputs. These are things the prospect is doing. And then you have a series of outputs that can include everything from paid media to people within your organization taking actions, emails, text messages, web copy, browser notifications, direct mail, etc. And so these replace the hands and the mouths of a person, and these are your eyes and your ears. And at the center is your marketing automation, acting as that hub, that brain. This is all well and good. If I've sold you and you're ready, okay, yay, we're going to get marketing automation. Now you got to figure out how to A, pay for it, and B, you need to go get an executive sponsor for this. And I'll explain why in a minute. That means making a solid case. Obviously, money talks. So if you can build an ROI model, that's going to be the easiest way to make a case for this. The good news is there are a number of statistics. If you go and Google ROI marketing automation out there are a great number of statistics that you can use to build your model, but I'm just going to throw two out here. 80% of businesses that have implemented marketing automation saw an increase in the number of leads. And from our experience, that increase can happen in a fairly short period of time. We're talking three months, 6 months, depending on how you're working to increase those number of leads. The other thing is that it's not just an incremental increase of like 20%. We're talking a 4.5 times increase on average, according to one independent study. So it's a huge impact on your organization just in lead generation if you're in the business of leads. If you're in the business of e-commerce, or have more of a direct buy capability, then the same is true of sales and revenue. You're going to increase your sales, you're going to shorten that sales cycle, and you're going to drive more business. The other thing that you can do is to make a business case is to do some competitive analysis. And this can work out in one of two ways. So I'm just going to pop up a random website here. And there's a plugin called Ghostery that you can load into your Chrome browser. Oops. And I'm just going to bring up Ghostery here. And it'll tell me all of the tracking that is loaded into this website here. Now, the Ghostery is really designed as a tool to help improve privacy. Remember, we're in the era of privacy here. But it can also be used for snooping on competitors. So based on this, I know Cooper Electric happens to run Marketo, right? So now I know that they run Marketo, and if they're a competitor of mine, I would want to look at, well, maybe we should be running some marketing automation as well. If you do this competitive analysis and you don't see any of the common marketing automation platforms here, that actually doesn't necessarily mean that it's not worthwhile in making a business case. That means you stand in a position to actually have a first mover advantage. You have the ability to be the first ones to move to that next level of marketing maturity and leapfrog your competitors in capabilities. So either way, if your competitors have the technology, now you can justify, well, we need this to stay competitive. And if your competitors don't, now you can say, well, we need this technology because that gives us an opportunity to leapfrog our competitors in marketing capabilities. And then finally, many organizations right now, especially as we are coming out of COVID, have embarked on some digital transformation initiatives. That's a great opportunity to hitch your wagon to a larger organizational shift and say, well, marketing needs to be more data-driven as well. In order to do that, we need the right tools. And marketing automation is a great place to start. I mentioned CDPs being the next wave of technology here, but I think for most of us, that's a level of sophistication that would be too far too fast. And if you're looking at marketing automation, I'd stick there. But it's an easy thing to bolt onto an existing digital transformation initiative. All right, let's talk a little bit about platforms. And included in the follow-up to this webinar, I'll get you guys a one sheet on these as well. But I'm just going to go through a quick overview of sort of the lay of the land, as it were. In the SMB space, there are a number of platforms available. They all have some slight differences or advantages. HubSpot markets itself to the SMB. They have a free level of their software. It will top off, and you're not going to be able to do everything with the free level, and you're going to end up paying at some point. But it is accessible at an SMB level. This is a pretty all-encompassing marketing platform, and it has a built-in CRM that you can choose to use or not. It's not required. You can also use the HubSpot CRM without the HubSpot marketing automation platform. They make it very easy to mix and match. Keep and ActiveCampaign are a little bit more of a sales-driven marketing automation platforms, to the point that Keep actually has its own built-in CRM, and you probably don't want to try to marry it with with a third-party CRM. So Keap used to be called Infusionsoft, and they really want to provide one piece of software for sales and marketing to really build more of a marketing team. So this is good if your organization is small and very sales-driven. It would be a good platform for you. ActiveCampaign also has a built-in CRM. It's not amazing, but it's there. So if you want to kill two birds with one stone, you can with that platform. But it also marries well with a lot of the other common CRMs out there. Oops. And MailChimp is MailChimp. They actually have invested significantly in their marketing automation platform, and it's fairly robust. I would say, at the level that they're at, it's not the most powerful, and it's not necessarily the easiest to use. But if you love MailChimp and you want to stay there, they're actually competitive now in the marketing automation space. But if you're mid-market, I wouldn't be looking at these three. At that point, you're really bumping up to looking at a Marketo, a Pardot, maybe ActiveCampaign, or HubSpot in a paid tier. And here's where you're looking at making probably in the neighborhood of, I'd say at a minimum $1,000 a month up to $2,000 a month in licensing fees. Marketo is a great platform. It does require more training than these ones will. The same thing with Pardot. HubSpot, probably, the good news is there's lots of great training out there for it. ActiveCampaign, I would say, is a little bit easier to use. Here, you start really looking at what are we running for CRM, how well do we want it to integrate, and then how powerful of a tool do you want? Marketo is going to be more powerful than Pardot, but it's going to require a little bit more effort. HubSpot is going to be on par with Pardot as far as power, and the nice thing about the HubSpot is if you stay in the HubSpot ecosystem with CRM and marketing automation, it's got a lot of breadth to the tool chain. And then finally, ActiveCampaign. You may end up topping out in the capabilities of ActiveCampaign when you start coming into mid-market and you have somebody who's responsible for working in this software as their primary job. On the enterprise side, we introduced Eloqua and Salesforce Marketing Cloud. Salesforce Marketing Cloud is really Salesforce's B2C opportunity here. But I know a number of B2B organizations that are sizable that also run it. So their sales team is happy to sell you Marketing Cloud if you're B2B, but they designed it as more of the B2C alternative to Pardot. Both of these are going to integrate seamlessly with Salesforce. But along with that, you're going to get the level of complexity that comes with at Salesforce. Salesforce expects everything to be well configured for you to have a Salesforce partner to help you get all that stuff configured. Eloqua is going to give you probably the best reporting out of any of these. It's really a data-driven marketing automation platform, but it's not necessarily easy to use. Marketo is easier to use, equally powerful or maybe more powerful than Eloqua, but the reporting kind of sucks. So that's sort of the lay of the land. Again, I'll get you guys a one sheet so you can really do a quick and dirty comparison. I do want to introduce you though over here. These are all software as a service. They all have licensing fees associated with them. Again, the HubSpot technically is free here, but you run out of mileage pretty quick on the free version. And in general, depending on the size of your database, you're starting at a few $100s here all the way up to when you hit mid-market and enterprise, you're starting at $1,200 or $1,000 per month. There is an open source alternative, just like WordPress is a free and open source website content management platform. Mautic is a free and open source marketing automation platform. So it's technically free. There's zero cost. You can go download the code and run it on your own server. However, it does require some additional work. It requires some hosting and maintenance. So you're looking at a couple $100 there just to keep the software up to date and running, just like you have to pay for hosting for your website. But that leaves that remaining budget that you would be spending on licensing, you can now spend on whatever else in your budget you need to spend it on, whether that's content creation or paying a partner to go and enhance the marketing automation platform, make it do more for you. It's a nice option out there. I will say the Mautic software is going to be a little bit harder to use than these commercial products. But if you'd rather your dollars went towards building things than paying licensing fees, it's a great opportunity. Okay. Key questions to ask. If you're in the process of picking a vendor and trying to move forward, a couple of things you need to look at. First and foremost, will this integrate with my CRM out of the box? And if not, how hard is it going to be to get it integrated? If you're running like an ERP platform for your CRM, some of these integrations can get ugly. So you want to make sure you've got a path to integrate. You do not want to run marketing automation without integrating with your CRM. You might not need to do that day one, but it's really required to be successful. Two, you want to look at what is the onboarding process. Do they offer onboarding for you? What is included? Is that an additional fee? Are you expected to onboard yourself? A lot of the SMB products, you're really expected to onboard yourself or pay a partner to do it. How long does an implementation take on average? Marketo implementations, Eloqua implementations, those are going to take months, whereas you can probably spin up an active campaign in days. So depending on the platform that you're looking at, the amount of time it will take to get it up and running can change drastically. You want to understand what the training, certification, and documentation situation is. Each of these products has a different level of documentation. You know, for example, HubSpot's documentation is phenomenal and incredibly deep. You get something like a Mautic or Keap or some of the other ones, and the documentation gets to be a little bit spottier. And so you want to understand what that level of documentation is. If there's a certification program you can run yourself or one member of your team through, and if not, or if so, what other training is available and at what cost? Is it self-service or are there courses, etc.? Finally, again, we're in the era of privacy. You want to make sure you understand how that software is going to help you with compliance. And this depends on where your audience is. If you have people in Europe that you sell to, this is especially important. But now we're seeing legislation in Canada that's going to look very similar to the GDPR here shortly. So understanding how the software helps you stay compliant with privacy regulations and laws is really important when you go to select that software, depending on where you are and who you serve. All right, a couple more keys to successful implementation, and then we'll open things up here to questions. You basically have two choices with all of these softwares. Are you going to use a partner, or are you going to go it alone and attempt to implement it yourself? If you're looking at a partner, most implementations, and I say most because I don't know your circumstances and the level of complexity, but you're usually looking at between $5,000 and $15,000. I would say keep your implementation small. Start small. You can grow into this software over time. Don't get overzealous. Don't let some partner try to sell you on every last little thing, getting implemented it just right on the front end. You need a couple core things in place: CRM synchronization. You need to have segmentation model that makes sense. You need to have templates, and then you're in pretty good shape to get started. Training is often bundled. If you've got a partner, they'll do the training instead of a third party or self-service training. There's a lot of advantage to using a partner for implementation. They've done it before. They know where all the pitfalls are and the common mistakes. Now, that doesn't mean you can't do it yourself, especially if you're a smaller organization or just getting started. Go ahead and play with a platform. ActiveCampaign is a great opportunity to do that. They've got good documentation. You can spin up an instance and get it synced without having to spend a ton of resources and effort. You will need that one person within the organization that is your technical champion. So this is somebody that understands the marketing side, and maybe they can't code, but they're really technically savvy. If you have that individual on staff and they're excited to go and learn and adopt this platform, or they've used it in a past job, you're good to go. If you don't, I would advise working with a partner. I think you'll end up in a position where you get frustrated with the software trying to figure out how to make it work, and it'll kill the whole thing. If there's one key to success in a successful marketing automation implementation, it is aligning stakeholders. And I'm going to go through a few of the stakeholders and how you need to get them on board on the team and get them aligned. First, you need an executive sponsor. This is somebody who will make sure that you've got the budget that you need, as well as remove roadblocks along the way, because sometimes various people within the organization don't want to help you or move as you're trying to get this implemented. Your project will go really slowly if you don't have an executive sponsor. Second, you absolutely need to involve sales in the process. There are a couple of reasons for this, but first and foremost, you need to understand what their business needs are along the lines of the CRM synchronization, pushing intelligence back into the CRM, routing leads. How does that need to go down? And then, make sure you're providing some utility to them at launch as well. If they have any automations or cadences that they want to be built, talk to them about that. What is the value of sending email from a salesperson? How would that work? How would that look? They need to be involved and brought along for the journey. And this is that nice entry point of improving that alignment between marketing and sales. You'll need someone from IT on your side. There's a couple reasons for this. One, generally in most organizations, IT has some responsibility for data oversight or compliance with things like the GDPR, HIPAA, whatever, financial regulations you might have, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of those fall into data governance, and the IT department bringing them along for the ride now will save you some headaches down the road. The second reason is just to get email to deliver correctly out of a system like this, it is very important that the email deliverability settings are set up correctly. And for that, you will have to work with IT. We actually have another webinar all about email deliverability. If you want to know about all the settings you got to work with the IT on, we can send that as well. Customer service. You're going to replace all the forms on your website as part of your implementation. At least that's the best practice. So in that process, you need to make sure that when somebody fills out that form, that any promises you make in the response are accurate according to the customer service team, if that's the person fielding that response. You also want to make sure there's just in general, anything that's automated out of the system that is dealing with current customers, falls in line with customer service expectations. Don't be afraid to share with them some of the capabilities in the system down the road of being able to automate some of your customer service processes. Marketing automation isn't just for new business. It's a great tool for existing business. Obviously, you want to make sure the entire internal marketing team is up to speed and aligned. In particular, you want to look at training. Who's going to get trained? How are they going to get trained? And who is your power user internally? Who is your primary point of contact? That's true if you have a partner that's doing a lot of the heavy lifting. You still need that power user, that semi-technical person, the most technical person on your team. They don't have to be, if you've got an agency partner or somebody else that's helping you with this, they don't need to be super technical, but you need to figure out who's that person that's actually going to be the only one, logging in some cases. And you do need to work on a training model. And then finally, you absolutely need to bring along any other partners, vendors, freelancers, anyone else outside of the organization that is touching your marketing or your website. If you don't, you end up with some decisions being made in other marketing activities, in other web or digital properties that don't align with the needs of the marketing automation platform. One of the keys to success, again, I mentioned, is replacing those forms. In order for the marketing automation platform to respond to these triggers and act according to behavior of people, it has to know who the people are. The only way it can do that is if somebody fills out a form. So one of the pitfalls that we see is a marketing automation platform gets implemented, but then somebody in marketing goes and picks some third-party landing page builder or this quiz maker or this thing over here that doesn't allow the marketing automation system to ingest that contact information and identify visitors. And now you're not getting the full value out of the system. So there's technical considerations that need to go in, as well as higher level strategic considerations. What is your goal? What are your goals when it comes to nurturing prospects? And how can we make sure that we're supporting those goals in all of our activities? If you get all these people aligned and along for the ride and make sure they're aware as you're doing this implementation and ask them the questions that are appropriate for their roles, you'll have a successful implementation. I'm going to leave you with one parting thought. Marketing automation is a necessary step in marketing maturity. This is technology that's been around for 15 years. If you look, you'll find competitors that are implementing it. If you don't have a solid marketing automation platform in place, then you're missing out at this time. But it doesn't have to be a huge leap. You don't need to go from 0 to 60 to start to see some ROI. And you can absolutely start small and grow your implementation to the point that you're mature enough that it's acting as that brain in the center of your model, right? It's receiving the sensory inputs, and it's responding accordingly. That takes time, and don't try to get there too fast. Grow your implementation slowly and deliberately, and continuously improve and grow your return on investment as you go. And with that, I know we have a smaller group here. I think I threw some people for a loop with the last minute URL change. But let's open this up and see if we have any questions. Corey?
Thanks, Steve. It looks like we've got one question in the chat right now from Bob. And I believe this was in looking at deciding a vendor. Bob asks, are there considerations for B2C versus B2B at the mid-market to enterprise level?
Yeah. I think there is. The biggest concern you're going to run into when you're looking B2C is going to be the number of contacts in your database, honestly. All of these platforms can go either way and work B2B or B2C, probably equally well. Where you're going to run into trouble is the licensing models for them. And so when you start looking at licensing models and you've got more than 10,000 contacts in your database, the costs can mount really quick. So Mautic can be a great opportunity there. And then there are a couple of B2C, more B2C centric systems, although most of them are really centered around e-commerce. And that would be my other question. If you're looking along e-commerce, there's a platform called Klaviyo that is marketing automation specifically for e-commerce and is geared well towards B2C. So if it's non-e-commerce, I might look at Mautic because you don't have the contact limit that's going to blow your pricing out of the water. It does have a steeper learning curve, but I think it's a good solution. And then if you're looking e-commerce, Klaviyo or Mautic will work well. Any other questions? Okay. Well, I want to thank everybody for making time today for this webinar. I want to encourage all of you to reach out. Go ahead and connect with me on LinkedIn. Oh, HIPAA compliance, Bob asked. So Bob asks, how about HIPAA compliance? I'm going to be honest, that is an area that gets really deep really fast because it's not only the standards for maintaining data in the database, but also where it's hosted, et cetera. I do know when we have touched healthcare, we've just been very deliberate about what data is in there and the sensitivity of that data. So we didn't have to focus as hard on compliance, but it's been a couple of years. So I'm going to dodge that a little bit. And Bob, I can follow up with you directly afterwards with some resources that I remember looking at in the past. Okay. Now we're going to call it a webinar. Thank you everyone for making time. Please do connect with me on LinkedIn. And please, if you have any more questions, go ahead and fire them off via email. I'm happy to respond and get you the help you need. Look for an email coming from us with a recording, as well as that one-sheeter on the various platforms. Hopefully that you find that valuable, and enjoy the rest of your day.